Hello, and thank you for joining us. This is No Soundbites Allowed, and I am your host, Michael Voss, Dragon of the Southern Tier, and I'm happy to be here with you today, May 5th of 2022, to talk about our nation, to talk about what the future of our nation will be. I know many people today are very fixated on Johnny Depp's trial, the defamation trial that he's going through at this time. But at the same time, there is a much larger, much more important issue affecting America. That is the Supreme Court. It really isn't about abortion. It's about the damage that has been done to the Supreme Court. But you may not be familiar with what's going on. Is it a crime to release information, a draft from the Supreme Court before a decision has been made? Is there a political outcome or an agenda that's being involved? How is this going to change life in America? There's a lot of questions here. We're going to try and go through some of the biggest questions with the biggest impact on your life. And you can tell us what you think. Now, before we get started, we do want to mention, if you have not seen our channel before, we welcome you and we thank you for being part of our audience. We do long-form political commentary. And every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we do a live stream with you. We go out reach out on all social media that the internet overlords will allow to be able to hear what you think, to hear your voice, and to get your texts, your chats, your tweets from anywhere in the world to tell us what you think is going on and how you feel about it. We hope this Sunday you will join us at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Is there a crime that's happened? Did someone, a law clerk, a judge, whomever it may be, did they commit a crime by leaking a draft of a Supreme Court decision that may reverse Roe versus Wade? That's a good question. And it's a question that it seems most Democrats do not want to ask. It's a question that they want to avoid. And it does bring up an issue, something that we've spoken about before. Matter of fact, we were just talking about that on May 3rd, that it seems that many progressives are upset because they expect people to act like them when there is an issue. That they're upset when they don't have control and power over the situation. I saw that at SUNY Room just on May 3rd alone. Now you may say, well, Mike, this isn't the same situation. And I will tell you, you're right. It's not the same situation. There are differences, but we seem to be working on the same ideology. That Democrats, the ones elected in Congress, are speaking up most vocally because they don't like the outcome and they don't like losing power and control. They don't like not having things go their way. Is that fair? Well, that's a different question. But they want us to believe that Americans do not trust and do not believe in the Supreme Court, that this decision has somehow changed the way America looks at the Supreme Court. That's not really true. Because if we take a look, and we can see this is from the Pew Research, February of 2022, and what we can see is that their polling found that while there is more adults who say that the Supreme Court is more conservative leaning since 2020, that 38% of adults believe that the Supreme Court is conservative, 48% of Americans believe that the Supreme Court is in the middle of the road, that it's essentially maybe center left or center right. That's right about where most people in America happen to be. Now, I know that's an unpopular point of view. It's not one that you're going to hear quoted by Nancy Pelosi or Chuck Schumer, but it is the opinion that we see in poll after poll. Most Americans tend to believe that the Supreme Court is essentially in line with their point of view. Not Democrats, though. 57% of Democrats disagree. They think that it's too conservative. In fact, the majority of people believe that the Supreme Court has exactly the right amount of power. That's 6 in 10, 58% of Americans believe that the Supreme Court is exactly where it's supposed to be, as one of the three branches of the United States government a check and balance to the legislative or Congress and the executive or the presidency, except for Democrats. Democrats don't think that. They're the only, and notice there's a trend here. Democrats think the Supreme Court is too conservative. Democrats think that the Supreme Court has too much power and is too political. But that's not what people generally believe. In fact, if we look at it, over time, this yellow line that you see on the screen right here, this is the average since 1935. This is the average of where the Supreme Court lies politically. And if you notice, that's just about where everyone in America is. It's about even. It's neutral, slightly leaning towards conservative. That's even considering today with Justice Barrett, Alito, Thomas, Kavanaugh, even with everyone in a 6-3 court right now, it's still almost neutral. And in fact, even looking at it from a slightly different point of view, looking at from 1950 to today, what we're seeing is the court, again, looking at the yellow line, which is the average, where they tend to be on balance. The biggest thing is in the 1960s, the Supreme Court was very liberal. And Democrats live in that time zone. They live in that world view. And they think of the court in that 1960s mindset, where many of these cases that we are debating today, including abortion, it's in that general time frame when the court made a reversal of its general position and became more liberal leaning. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. It's an important frame of reference. And you don't hear that from CNN. You're not hearing that from ABC, MSNBC. You're not seeing that in the New York Times. Historically, just like America, the court is center-right. And that's what most of America is, which is why most Americans believe it's about in the right place and has the right power. But we are hearing from many members of Congress, many senators right now, who are telling us that the Supreme Court has gone too far. It's far too crazy. It's all the way on the right. No, the left has just gone further from the center. And most people, including the Supreme Court, are right where they always were. The conservatives and Republicans haven't changed their opinion about abortion. It's the same opinion we've always had. And the majority of Americans really haven't changed their opinion about abortion. Again, most people believe that if there's a heartbeat, there is life, and that the baby's life is something that should be protected. It should not be aborted. It should not be killed. And let's not parse words. Abortion is giving someone the right to kill a baby's life. That's just a fact. You don't have to like it. You don't have to feel, it doesn't have to make you feel good. It's just a reality. If there's a heartbeat, there's a life, and that life does have some legal protections. And that's why in almost every state, you'll see that the country has said at about 15 weeks and beyond, that's late-term abortion, and most states don't agree with that. Now, New York, California, a few others do believe in late-term abortion. In fact, abortion up to the moment of birth. And I will show you the documentation to prove that. But let's deal with this question of, well, the Supreme Court is so conservative. Is it really? And that people are upset about the direction of the Supreme Court. Are you sure about that? Because I don't think that's true. What I do think is that the major news media have changed people's opinion about the Supreme Court, that they have brought politics into the Supreme Court in a way that we have never seen before. Think about it. In 2018, unconfirmed accusations against Brett Kavanaugh, someone who is more than qualified and was going for the Supreme Court. And we had allegations that were unsubstantiated. No one has ever proven anything that has been accused against him. But they said, oh no, but he has to be evil because the news media did not like him. They did not want another conservative, and they were angry about it. And we saw this come back. They have never let this go, by the way. In 2019, we heard about it again, and it was an issue for not just the Supreme Court, but it was an issue about the election as well. And we saw many people upset about that. But then came 2020, and we heard about court packing, and we heard about packing the courts, and we talked about this and Amy Coney Barrett, and the fact that, again, she was attacked in a way that we had never seen before, where Kavanaugh had charges, these allegations brought against him that were completely unsubstantiated. We saw that Amy Coney Barrett was being accused of being too religious, that her religion was the big question, and that she couldn't be unbiased because she was a woman. These are accusations we've never seen thrown against Democrats. It's never happened. But yet, that's what happened to Amy Coney Barrett. Questions about racism and her ability to be impartial, even though she has a biracial child. Even though we see that she's spoken eloquently and is more than qualified. In fact, if we bring it up to current day in 2022, there was the most recent Supreme Court Justice, Ketanji Brown Jackson, who is an activist judge. We know that. We know that from what she has said publicly, and we know that from what she has ruled on the bench. And we know this, that she was put in place because of the color of her skin and her gender. Those were the priorities, as promised by Joe Biden, that she had to fill the checkboxes of being black and a woman. Again, this separates most of America. And the reason why all these cases are important, think about it. We have watched since 2018 to 2022, a 4-year period, and we have seen in that time frame 3 Supreme Court justices, and we have seen issues that divide America being thrown against them. This is something that's very troubling for many people in America, that we would pick a Supreme Court justice based on the color of their skin and their gender, and then to watch that person be an activist and to see them be lenient to some of the worst types of criminals that exist in our system, in our society. I think the opinion of the public changed or is being changed by the way the coverage from the news media has been presenting it. That we're seeing far more extreme leftists coming into the Supreme Court, and those who are middle of the road or maybe slightly conservative are being demonized because they're not far left enough. But that brings us to today. And that brings us to the question of, well, what about what's happened now? We have had someone leak information from the Supreme Court, a draft of a decision that we have not seen the final decision on, that was meant to cause division in the United States, to create an uproar, to provide the Democratic Party a winning argument. They can't win on they can't win on the economy. They can't win on Afghanistan and the Americans that they have abandoned. They can't win on anything that's been going on. In fact, most Americans are upset with the Biden-Harris administration. But now they have something that they can win, some red meat that they can dangle in front of progressives and many women, whether they're independent or Democrats, to try and gin up their anger, get them emotional, and make them vote on that emotional basis. And Democrats are doing this very specifically because they do not want to address, well, was there a crime here? Because this is the first time that we have seen a leak of information from the Supreme Court before they make a decision. They're politicizing the Supreme Court, even more than what we have seen with Kavanaugh, with Amy Coney Barrett. In fact, I want you to hear what was said today by Senator Klobuchar. I think she says something that's very important, and we'll take a listen to that right now.
When I heard all the outrage about the leak, I don't like leaks. I understand why they're trying to figure out who did the leak. I get all this. But in the end, no one's going to care about that.
No one's going to care that some historic change has been made to Supreme Court, that someone has leaked information and caused the Supreme Court to be more politicized than it has ever been before, that it has disrupted the balance of power in the United States. That's not something anyone's going to remember. I think they will. Go on.
That opinion comes out if it's anything close to what we just read. It doesn't just, when they say it'll take us back to the 50s, it's not the 1950s, it's like the 1850s.
Well, that's not true. That's an out and outright lie. And the news media has propagated this lie about abortion. This isn't going to suddenly make abortion illegal in the United States. That's a lie. That's the feeling that they want women and many people across America to believe. They want you to feel like there's suddenly going to be a crime here. That's not the case. If we see Roe versus Wade overturned, well, guess what? We're going to go back to the states, and each and every individual state will be allowed to do what it does. In particular, talking about New York State. New York State will still allow late-term abortions, abortions of viable children, children that can live outside of the womb in the 6th, 7th, 8th month. They'll still allow abortions of that. So will California. So will several other states. That doesn't change. In fact, nothing really changes. The states that don't want to have late-term abortions will continue to not have late-term abortions. States that will allow late-term abortions of children up to the moment of birth will still allow people to kill those babies at the moment of birth. This hasn't changed. So to say this, Amy Klobuchar knows, as a senator, she knows that she is ginning up the emotions of a small portion of America by telling them something that isn't accurate. But what else does she have to say?
In the first page of that opinion, Justice Alito, and we now know he wrote it, he led with the word abortion is not in the Constitution. Well, you know what else isn't in the Constitution? Birth control isn't in the Constitution. Contraceptives aren't in the Constitution.
True, they aren't. But that isn't the issue we're talking about with Roe versus Wade, if we're going to focus on that. Because if you continue to read what was written of the 98 pages written by Justice Alito, in particular is page 5, which we've covered earlier this week, and I advise you to look at that video. But we already know that what he's saying is the difference isn't about privacy, because it isn't a privacy issue. It's about birth, about a child being alive, having a heartbeat, being a human being, and it is the purpose, the singular purpose of the United States government to protect those who cannot protect themselves. See, in contraception, you're talking about privacy, the ability of Americans to do things. It's not going to take away someone's life. And that's a big difference. Democrats want to try and make you think, well, it's about having privacy. No, it's not. It's about life. The question of abortion is only about life. So to compare it to issues that aren't about life is a distraction. It's a way to keep your emotions high without thinking about the facts of what's actually going on. And Senator Klobuchar knows that, which is why she's trying to distract from the fact that this is about life and death of a baby. But let's continue.
All these things, rights that have been established over time by thoughtful justices, including Republican-appointed justices like Justice Blackmun, who was a Republican-appointed justice from the state of Minnesota, who wrote the opinion in Roe v. Wade. All of that, supposedly now, is going to go out the window. So if you want to hear outrage, you can be all outraged, but you're going to hear outrage at the ballot box.
Okay, and that's it. She's telling you this is about politics. She's telling you that this is about votes, and that if you don't submit to what she wants, to her will and the will of the Democratic Party, well, then it's about an election. It's about losing votes. That's not what this is about. Again, abortion is about life. And more importantly, we're not there yet. We don't know what the decision is going to be, but we know that the political pressure that is coming from Amy Klobuchar, as well as many other Democrats, is trying to put political pressure on Supreme Court justices to make a decision. where it shouldn't be, where Americans say it isn't at this moment, and that it should not become more politicized. But that's exactly what the Senate is doing right now. That is exactly what Democrats are doing. They're trying to make it more political. We have taken away one of the most powerful tools allowed to the Supreme Court, the ability to have a conversation about the Constitution, about our rights, and what is the best service of those rights. We're taking that away, and that's important. And she doesn't want you to think about that. Democrats are saying, well, it's settled law. You can't change Roe versus Wade. It's settled. Well, really? Because Democrats seem to have no problem fighting against settled law. Like we mentioned in our tweet that you can see today, Democrats in Congress shouted that it's settled law. They said the same thing, by the way, about the vaccine mandates. Even though as the science kept changing, month after month, week after week, sometimes day after day, when we would see these changes happen, and we were told it's because of the science, and the science is settled even as the science is changing, well, they said the same thing about law, that Roe versus Wade is settled. But so is Heller versus DC, a case that was decided 14 years ago, and that would allow American citizens the right to carry a handgun. And yet we hear Democrats fighting against that on a regular basis. We hear Democrats fighting about Citizens United. In fact, that bill it's been around for 10 years. And in 2020, Democrats were continuing to fight against that decision, and they constantly mentioned that it needs to be reversed. We've heard that over and over again. And the only time it seems that Democrats are worried about whether or not something is settled is when it's something that agrees with what they believe. So any bill, any law, anything that's been decided by the Supreme Court, if it falls in line with the progressive ideology, then Democrats are perfectly fine with leaving it alone. But anything that goes against their ideology, well, then that's bad. That's something that's politicized, something that is obviously has to be changed. The American people believe and see, and it is shown that the Supreme Court really isn't as hyper-political as Democrats want it to be. If you're wondering, yes, 10 years after Citizens United was decided, Democrats are coming out still trying to fight that. There's still all the arguments about District of Columbia versus Heller. We're continuing to see that. And I want to go back to what are we actually talking about when we speak about Roe versus Wade? We're talking about late-term abortion. These are abortions after 24 weeks. After 24 weeks, after 6 months. And we know, medical science, you can have a baby prematurely at 5 months, and that baby will survive and become a grown adult, a healthy, productive member of the United States. But in New York State, you can still get an abortion after 6 months. 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, 9 months, up to the moment of conception. Late-term abortion exists in New York State. We have none other to thank for that than Andrew Cuomo. And even CBS on January 24th, 2019, they stated, New York passes law allowing abortions at any time if the mother's health is at risk. Not that she's going to die, because they make it very clear. It's not about death. It's about her health being at risk. If anything could affect her health, theoretically, if she could have a migraine, then that is a reason why a late-term abortion could be allowed. That's what New York State's law allows. That's what the disgraced governor and former dictator of New York has brought forth. That's late-term abortion. That's what Democrats are fighting for, and they don't want you to think about it, but that's what they're fighting for. In the following states, the pregnancy must threaten the mother's life or her health. Her health must be at risk, which doesn't mean life-threatening. We already have that. That's a different classification. We're talking about her health being changed, upset. then you can still get an late-term abortion. That's true in Arizona, California, Connecticut, Delaware, Hawaii, Illinois, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Minnesota, Nevada, New York, Virginia, Washington. How many of those are bluer than blue states? How many of those states are Democrat strongholds, progressive strongholds in America? There is an event that information about a decision from the Supreme Court that we don't know what that decision is was leaked out to the press, specifically to engage Democrats, progressives, women, and to make them angry. Because the news media has spent over 50 years absolutely portraying abortion as anything but a life and death decision about a baby. All the news media has made sure that that's very clear in most people's mind. So we have something that is meant to change the opinion of votes. Amy Klobuchar made that clear. This is about the 2022 election. This is about the 2024 presidential election. This is about votes. And Democrats want you to be emotional, so you vote based on your emotion, not the law, not the Constitution, not about the life of a baby. They don't want to have that discussion because they believe that they will lose if it's that discussion. But is there a crime here? Did someone break the law? We can say they have broken the Supreme Court. They have broken a branch of our government by introducing politics in the one part of the United States government that is not supposed to be political, and most people do not believe is overly political. Is there a crime that goes along with breaking a piece of the government? It's a great question. And the answer, this is from Wired magazine, and I quote, "But all of that furor is undermined by an inconvenient legal truth. Leaking a Supreme Court decision doesn't actually seem to be a crime, at least not by any clear and undisputed definition." Are we sure about that? The big deal is about the decision we're trying to politicize and the pressure we're trying to put on the Supreme Court, including having Democratic progressive organizations walk up and down and around the homes of Supreme Court justices to try and change their minds before the final decision is made. Looking at a law professor from California, Berkeley Law, and he says that as far as I can tell, there is no federal criminal law that directly prohibits the disclosure of a draft legal opinion. Maybe there should be, but right now there isn't, according to his opinion. Now, does this mean that whoever leaked the opinion to Politico will face no criminal liability at all? Not necessarily. Although the leaking itself isn't a crime, maybe, there may be a crime somewhere in the bigger picture. Like, did they steal the information? Did they hack the information? How did they get this information to then send it to news media? So it could be a crime. But it could also be a crime because of 18 U.S. Code 641, Public Money, Property, and Records, which states, and I will quote, "Whoever embezzles, steals, purloins, or knowingly converts to his use or the use of another, or without authority, sells, conveys, or disposes of any record, voucher, money, or thing of value of the United States, or any department or agency thereof, or any property made or being made under the contract for the United States, or any department, agency thereof, shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 10 years. You can be in jail for 10 years. Besides losing any law license that may be available, being barred from ever being able to be a judge or in the Supreme Court. So there is a crime that may be here because there is a value to this. And the court has decided, like with Eric Snowden, like with Assange, that information does have a value. In addition, how they took that information may also be a crime. So there are crimes that have been committed here, or we believe may have been committed here at this moment. But is that really the biggest thing to worry about? And I would say the answer is yes, because this is a moment of precedence for the United States. We've already gone over. This isn't going to prevent abortions in America. That's a fact. It may not be a very popular fact. It may not be a fact that Democrats want anyone to think about, but the fact is abortion will not disappear in America. That's true. And we know that it's something that Democrats don't like, and so they're going to use it politically. They've politicized this. We know that is a fact as well. Amy Klobuchar said so herself. And we know that many Democrats and Democratic organizations are trying now to push forward an idea that no one in America supports, which is packing the courts, something that has been 150 years that America has rejected, that they're now going to try and push through because they're making it political, and that will give them a political advantage on doing something that people without anger would never agree with. But if people are thinking emotionally, if they're thinking only with the anger in their hearts based on the misinformation that they are being provided, well then, yeah, Democrats are able to gain more power and to unbalance our government. If this is allowed to happen, if this individual goes unpunished, well then what's to stop the next person from leaking a memo that maybe is more left-leaning, something that Justice Sotomayor or Justice Jackson, that's something that they write and then is leaked? Will the Democrats have the same opinion at that time? Because we know when it's something that they want, well, then it's an outrage, all furor. They go out amongst the streets and, just as we have seen, breaking down buildings, destroying property, endangering people's lives. We've seen that in LA. We've seen that across the country. They go out and riot. So imagine if this was being done to a Democrat. Do you think they would riot over that as well? And the answer is probably. That's what seems to be consistent these days. Progressives will go out and riot over anything that isn't exactly what they want. So we should keep that in mind. And it's an important issue. Is the crime the decision on Roe versus Wade? No. Does this break our government? Yes. Does this have long-lasting implications? Absolutely. Especially if it goes unpunished. If, like some in the more progressive-leaning individuals in the Democratic Party, keep trying to put this person who leaked this information, the more they continue to say that this is a hero, the less likely they're going to get punished, the more damage this does to our Supreme Court. We need to focus on this. This is important. Because depending on how America reacts to this, if we react emotionally, we will see our courts packed. We will see the Supreme Court turned into a circus, and it will become political. And if it becomes political, it will no longer be able to serve its purpose, and the third branch of our government will be forever broken, not just by activist judges, but by the mere fact that it cannot operate independently. It cannot operate nonpartisan. Perhaps you disagree. Maybe you think that this should have happened. Tell me why. Do you think this doesn't break our government? Tell me how. Do you think that the person who leaked this information is a hero or a criminal? We want to hear what you think, and we look forward to hearing what you have to say, not just today, but also on Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, when we will be having our live stream, taking your calls, your chats, and your tweets from anywhere and around the world to speak about this issue and so many others, because where America leads, the rest of the world does tend to follow. We hope to hear from you very soon. Thank you.